My name is Charlotte Whitmore, and until 3 months ago, I was the perfect political wife. I smiled at charity galas, nodded approvingly during campaign speeches, and never, ever contradicted my husband, Marcus, in public. For 12 years, I played this role flawlessly, believing that love meant sacrifice, and that marriage meant losing yourself piece by piece until nothing remained but a reflection of someone else's ambitions. Marcus Whitmore was running for Senate, and according to everyone around us, he was destined to win. The polls showed him ahead by double digits, the endorsements poured in daily, and our marriage was held up as the gold standard of political partnerships. The Whitmores, they called us in the society pages, as if we were a brand rather than two individual human beings. But brands don't feel the suffocating weight of expectations. Brands don't lie awake at night wondering when they stopped recognizing themselves in the mirror. Brands don't flinch when their husband's voice rises just a decibel too high, or when his grip on their arm tightens just a fraction too much during photo opportunities. The night everything changed started like any other campaign event. The grand ballroom at the Meridian Hotel was packed with donors, supporters, and journalists, all hanging on Marcus's every word. I stood in my designated spot, 3 feet to his left, wearing the navy blue dress his campaign manager had selected, my smile practiced and unwavering. Marcus was in his element, commanding the room with the charisma that had first attracted me to him in law school. Back then, I thought his confidence was sexy. Now I recognized it for what it truly was, an unshakable belief that the world owed him everything, and that everyone in it, including me, existed solely to serve his vision of success. "My fellow Americans," Marcus began, his voice carrying easily across the crowded ballroom. "Tonight we stand at a crossroads of destiny." The crowd erupted in applause, and I clapped along mechanically, my face aching from holding the same expression for hours. I had heard this speech dozens of times, could recite it word for word, but tonight felt different. Maybe it was the way the chandelier light caught the wedding ring that suddenly felt like a shackle around my finger. Maybe it was the realization that I couldn't remember the last time Marcus had asked about my dreams, my thoughts, my feelings about anything that didn't directly relate to his campaign. Success in politics, like success in marriage, requires unwavering commitment, Marcus continued, his eyes finding mine across the room. There was something in his gaze that made my blood run cold, a possessiveness that went beyond normal spousal affection. "It requires knowing that some bonds can never be broken, that some partnerships are destined to last forever." The crowd murmured their approval, but I felt nauseated. He was talking about me, about us, but in a way that made our marriage sound like a business merger rather than a union of love. I had become a prop in his political theater, and he was reminding everyone, including me, that I belonged to him. "My beautiful wife, Charlotte, has been by my side for over a decade," he said, gesturing toward me with that practiced politician's smile. "She understands what it means to be part of something bigger than herself. She knows that when you commit to greatness, you commit completely." I felt the eyes of 300 people on me, all expecting me to beam with pride at being mentioned. Instead, I felt like I was drowning in plain sight. This wasn't love he was describing, it was ownership. "Charlotte has sacrificed her own career aspirations to support our shared vision," Marcus continued, and something inside me snapped. Sacrificed. As if giving up my dreams of becoming a documentary filmmaker had been my choice, rather than the result of years of subtle manipulation and guilt trips about being selfish and not understanding what it takes to build something important. She knows that in a true partnership, you don't just walk away when things get challenging. You don't abandon ship when the waters get rough." His voice was rising now, taking on that evangelical fervor that his supporters loved. Real commitment means staying the course no matter what. It means understanding that some vows are sacred, some promises are permanent. The crowd was eating it up, but all I could hear was the subtext: "You belong to me. You will never leave me. You don't have a choice." And then he said it, the words that would echo in my mind for the rest of my life. "My Charlotte understands that love means never having to say goodbye. She knows that no matter what happens, no matter what challenges we face, she'll never leave me, because that's what real love looks like. It's permanent, it's unbreakable, it's forever." The applause was thunderous, but I couldn't hear it over the sound of my own heartbeat. In that moment, staring at my husband as he confidently declared that I would never leave him, I realized that he didn't see me as a person with my own agency. I was an accessory to his success, a decoration for his political image, a possession to be displayed and controlled. But possessions don't have feelings. Possessions don't dream of freedom. And possessions certainly don't have the power to walk away. I did. I don't remember making the conscious decision to leave. One moment I was standing there, trapped in the spotlight of Marcus's assumptions, and the next I was moving. Not toward him, as everyone expected, but toward the exit. My heels clicked against the marble floor as I walked through the crowd, my fixed smile finally faltering. I heard confused murmurs, saw surprised faces turning to watch me go, but I didn't stop. For the first time in 12 years, I was moving in a direction that Marcus hadn't predetermined for me. "Charlotte," I heard him call from the podium, his politician's voice wavering slightly. "Honey, where are you going?" I didn't turn around. I couldn't. If I looked back at his face, saw the mixture of confusion and anger that I knew would be there, I might lose my nerve. I might go back to being the woman who apologized for taking up space, who dimmed her own light so his could shine brighter. The hotel lobby was a blur of marble and gold, but I kept walking until I reached the valet stand. My hands were shaking as I handed over my ticket, but my voice was steady when I spoke. "I need my car, please. It's urgent." "Right away, Mrs. Whitmore," the young man said, probably assuming I was handling some campaign emergency. If only he knew that the emergency was me finally waking up after 12 years of sleepwalking through my own life. My phone was buzzing incessantly. Marcus, his campaign manager, my mother-in-law, probably half the people at that dinner. But I didn't answer. For once in my life, I was unavailable to manage Marcus's image, to smooth over his rough edges, to be whatever version of myself the situation required. I was just Charlotte, and Charlotte was done. The law offices of Pemberton, Hayes & Associates stayed open late for clients like me, the ones who needed legal counsel at odd hours, who couldn't wait until morning because morning might bring second thoughts and reconciliation attempts. Vivian Hayes, the senior partner, met me in her office at 11:47 p.m., still wearing the elegant suit she'd had on at the political dinner I'd just fled. "I saw you leave," she said simply, pouring me a cup of coffee with steady hands. "I've been waiting for this call for about 3 years now." Vivian and I had served on several charity boards together, and she had a reputation for handling high-profile divorces with discretion and fierce advocacy. More importantly, she understood what it was like to be married to a man who thought his ambitions were more important than your autonomy. "I want a divorce," I said, the words feeling foreign and thrilling in my mouth. "Tonight. I want to file tonight." "Are you sure?" she asked, not because she doubted my decision, but because she wanted me to be certain. "Once we file these papers, there's no taking it back quietly. Marcus is a public figure, and this will be news." I thought about his words at the podium. about the casual certainty with which he declared that I would never leave him. I thought about the years I'd spent molding myself into his ideal political wife, about the documentary projects I'd abandoned, the friendships I'd let atrophy because they didn't fit his image of what our social circle should look like. "I'm sure," I said. He said I'd never leave him. I want him to know how wrong he was. Vivian smiled, not with malice, but with the satisfaction of a woman who understood what it meant to reclaim your own life. "Then, let's get to work." We spent the next 4 hours drafting divorce papers that would shake the foundation of Marcus's carefully constructed political empire. Irreconcilable differences, division of assets, and a very public filing that would hit the courthouse records first thing Monday morning. By the time I left Vivian's office, dawn was breaking over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that reminded me why I'd once wanted to be a filmmaker. There was beauty in new beginnings, in the way light could transform everything it touched. My phone had died hours ago, which meant I'd been blissfully unreachable during what I could only imagine had been Marcus's increasingly frantic attempts to control the narrative. By now, someone had probably told him I'd left the hotel entirely. By Monday, when the divorce papers became public record, he'd understand that this wasn't just a dramatic exit, it was a declaration of independence. I drove to the small apartment I'd been secretly renting for 2 months, ever since I'd first admitted to myself that my marriage was a prison. It wasn't much, a 1-bedroom place across town with outdated fixtures and a view of the parking lot, but it was mine. Completely, utterly mine. The first thing I did was change into jeans and a sweater that Marcus had always hated because he said it made me look too casual for a senator's wife. Then I made coffee in my own kitchen, sat on my own couch, and finally allowed myself to cry. Not from sadness, but from relief. Marcus had been wrong about so many things, but mostly, he'd been wrong about me. I wasn't the fragile, dependent woman he'd shaped me into. I wasn't a decoration for his political career or a prop in his success story. I was Charlotte Whitmore, filmmaker, dreamer, survivor, and I had just proven that some cages can be opened from the inside. He'd said I would never leave him, but he'd forgotten that never is just another word for watch me. 3 months later, I'm sitting in a coffee shop in Portland, editing my first documentary in over a decade. It's about women who found the courage to start over, to choose themselves when the world told them they belonged to someone else. Marcus lost the Senate race. Turns out voters don't trust a man who can't even keep his own wife happy. But that's his story to tell. The documentary is called Breaking Point, and it features 12 women from different walks of life who reach their moment of truth. There's Elena, the corporate executive who walked out of a board meeting when her boss made a sexist joke one too many times. There's Sarah, the pastor's wife, who left her congregation to pursue her calling as a therapist. And there's Maria, the immigrant mother who finally reported her abusive husband despite the risk to her citizenship status. Each woman has a different story, but they all share that same pivotal moment, the instant when they realized that staying small to make others comfortable was no longer an option, the moment when they chose themselves. The film has already been accepted into 3 film festivals, including Sundance. The irony isn't lost on me that my career is finally taking off now that I'm no longer trying to shrink myself to fit into Marcus's political image. Success, it turns out, comes easier when you're not constantly fighting against your own nature. I've also started dating someone, a cinematographer named David Chen, who treats my dreams with the same respect he gives his own. He's never once suggested that I should compromise my vision for the sake of our relationship. When I told him about my marriage to Marcus, about the years I spent disappearing into someone else's ambitions, he said something that stopped me in my tracks. The most attractive thing about you is how fully you occupy your own life now. The divorce was finalized last month. Marcus fought it initially, hiring an aggressive legal team that tried to paint me as unstable, vindictive, gold-digging,
all the usual accusations thrown at women who dare to leave powerful men. But Vivian Hayes had prepared for that. We had documentation of every sacrifice I'd been asked to make, every dream I'd been told to defer, every time I'd been made to feel like my own aspirations were selfish or unrealistic. The settlement was fair, though Marcus's lawyer tried to argue that I didn't deserve half of his assets since I hadn't contributed financially to our household. That argument fell apart quickly when Vivian presented evidence of all the unpaid labor I'd performed as his campaign coordinator, event planner, image consultant, and social strategist. Turns out 12 years of being the perfect political wife had significant monetary value. But the most important thing was something Marcus could never understand: the right to disappoint people, the right to say no, the right to prioritize my own happiness without having to justify it to anyone. My mother called last week, still trying to convince me that I'd made a mistake. He would have been a senator, Charlotte, she said, as if his potential political success somehow negated the fact that I was miserable. Do you know how many women would kill for that kind of life? Then they can have it, I told her. I'm done living someone else's idea of what my life should look like. The truth is, I don't regret a single moment of that night 3 months ago. Not the walk across the ballroom floor when hundreds of people were watching. Not the 4 hours in Vivian's office drafting papers that would end my marriage. Not even the brutal media attention that followed, when every detail of our divorce became public fodder. The media circus was particularly intense during the first month. Headlines like "Senator Candidate's Wife Abandons Campaign" and "Political Marriage Crumbles Under Pressure" dominated the news cycle. Marcus's campaign tried to spin it as a temporary separation, suggesting I was having some sort of breakdown brought on by the stress of public life. His spokesperson even released a statement saying he was committed to supporting his wife through this difficult time and that he remained hopeful for reconciliation.
I watched those press conferences from my little apartment, marveling at how easily he continued to speak for me, even after I'd made it clear I was done being his ventriloquist dummy. The audacity was breathtaking, really. Even in divorce, he couldn't resist trying to control the narrative of my life. But the truth has a way of surfacing, especially when you stop trying to hide it. I gave one interview to Rebecca Martinez at the Portland Tribune, a journalist I'd known from my college days who understood the importance of letting women tell their own stories. In it, I spoke honestly about the gradual erosion of my identity, about how political marriages often become breeding grounds for emotional manipulation disguised as ambition. People keep asking me what Marcus did wrong, I told Rebecca during our 3-hour conversation at a quiet cafe downtown. But that's not the right question. The right question is, what did I do wrong by staying so long after I stopped recognizing myself in the mirror? The interview went viral within hours. Suddenly, women from across the country were sharing their own stories of marriages where they'd lost themselves in service of someone else's dreams. The hashtag Charlotte Challenge started trending, with women posting about moments when they'd chosen themselves despite societal pressure to stay small and accommodating. Marcus was furious. He called me 17 times the day the article was published, leaving increasingly angry voicemails about how I was destroying everything we'd built together. The irony was palpable. He still didn't understand that there had never been a we in our marriage, only him and his ambitions, with me serving as an unwilling supporting actress in his one-man show. His campaign never recovered. Voters, particularly women voters, began questioning a man who couldn't recognize his own wife's unhappiness after 12 years of marriage. How could he represent their interests if he'd been so thoroughly blind to the person closest to him? Because that night, when Marcus stood at that podium and confidently declared that I would never leave him, he revealed something crucial. He had never really known me at all. The woman he thought he'd married, compliant, predictable, content to live in his shadow, had been a performance, a 12-year audition for a role I was never suited to play. The real Charlotte Whitmore, it turns out, was always going to leave. She was just waiting for the right moment to remember who she was. This is mine. And for the first time in 12 years, I'm the one writing it. If this story shocked you, just wait for what's next. Leave a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and of course, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss a single notification.